everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and today I am really quite thrilled to be speaking with Kirk Adams. I was introduced to him through someone who's really one of my most favorite people on this planet, Tyler Adams. He and I were connected through Tiny Pulse, a company he used to work for, and he's probably listening right now, so yay, your dad's on. He wasn't expecting that, I think, at some point, but it happened. But I'm really thrilled to have you because I know that knowing him, that you've got to be just an amazing human being. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be having this conversation with you today.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
I am really where I should be, I think. I'm a totally blind person. My retina's detached when I was 5 years old. I became totally blind. I went to a school for blind children in the state of Oregon, learned blindness skills, braille, traveling independently with the long white cane, how to type on a typewriter, etc. Started in public school in fourth grade, and it was before some of our current legislation was passed, so it was very much sink or swim. And I swam hard, and I was a successful student and athlete, etc. Was fortunate to receive an academic scholarship to Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, and performed well there. I received a degree in economics, 4-point cum laude, a Phi Beta Kappa, and then when it came time to find a job, I experienced the barriers to employment that so many blind people face. Only 30% of working age blind adults are employed. That's about half of the number for the general population. So there's lots of issues in our community stemming largely from that employment situation. So a third of blind people are living in poverty. Home ownership is a tenth of the general population, et cetera, et cetera. So I experienced that. I did enter the world of work. I was in finance, banking, public finance for 10 years, and then had my wife and I had our lovely little boy Tyler was born, and his sister Rachel came along a little bit later, and I turned 30, and I just did some self-reflection, and I really decided through a process, actually, is what color is your parachute, and determined I should be in the nonprofit sector. I should be in a leadership role. I should be in an organization that serves people who are blind. So condensing this, I entered the sector through fundraising. I became a development officer for the Seattle Public Library Foundation. I went back to school and got a master's in not-for-profit leadership, and ended up as the CEO of the Lighthouse for the Blind in Seattle, which is an employment organization employing people who are blind and deafblind in some really interesting businesses, including very sophisticated aerospace manufacturing. So led that organization. I was there 16 years. Became involved with my current organization, the American Foundation for the Blind, by serving on a advisory committee and then joining the board of trustees. And in the meantime, it became very clear to me this is where I want to spend my rest of my working career, is creating change in systems to eliminate barriers for people who are blind. And went back to school again, A year ago this month, I completed my doctorate in leadership and change. So I have a PhD in leadership and change from Antioch University. I was given the opportunity to put my name forward as a possible leader of American Foundation for the Blind when my successor retired. There was a nationwide search. I was offered the opportunity and took it, which meant moving from Seattle, Washington to New York, where AFB was headquartered. Lived in a teeny little apartment in Brooklyn and took the A train to the F train into Penn Station every day. Our offices were right there next to Madison Square Garden. A very different experience for me. And then led a strategic planning process really to get we're on our 99th year. American Foundation for the Blind has been around a long time. Helen Keller was our most famous employee for 45 years. And we walked through a really good, thorough, robust strategic planning process and got clarity on where we wanted to be in our next chapter as an organization. And that's focusing on systems change and looking at everything through the lens of employment. As we did the root cause analysis, we find a good, well-paying, meaningful, interesting job with a career path solves a lot of problems for people in our community. So we're looking at education of blind children. What do they need in order to be prepared to transition into work? Looking at the working age blind adult population, how do we create those opportunities and pathways and address that terrible workforce participation number? And then for older individuals, most people who are legally blind are over 65, and most people who are visually impaired become visually impaired later in life. And so there's real issues around people becoming legally blind while they're working. Vast percentage of people leave the workforce, don't re-enter the workforce. We would like to have people remain productive and engaged and working if they choose to. So we're a private nonprofit. We have a volunteer board. We have a very broad charter, which is improve the lives of blind people in our country. And we get to decide whatever that is at any given time. So to be the president and CEO of this very unique, historic, iconic organization in the blindness field really gives me a special opportunity to make a difference.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that full journey. I know you left out tons of pain and lots of other right of the hills. We talk about the hills and the valleys, and I know you left some of that out because I do that same thing in my own story. And so, but I think right now with so much that we're facing right now in the world, not even just the nation, stories like yours are really uplifting. And so thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm curious to know. I love the way when you walked us through the story, and then you said, and so I need to do this, and I need to be the leader, and I need to do that. Where does that drive to lead come from? Because there's different reasons why people have a drive to lead. Where do you think yours stems from?
I think it's the why. What is your why? Everyone should, I think about that. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think my why is just thinking back on being a blind child and talking to parents who are like my parents. They had never met a blind person before. They have a child who's blind. They don't know where to go. They're scared. They don't know what the future can hold. And I talk to parents all the time, and they ask me, what does the future hold for my child? And I can't, at this point in time, honestly say it's not going to be a struggle. You're going to have to do everything right. You're going to have to, fortunately, live in the right school district that has the right resources. You're going to have to go above and beyond all the time to put your child in a position to live the life they want to live. And it's very hit or miss. If you happen to be born into a family that has the resources and has the advocacy skills, then you can make it. If you're not, then it gets very, very hard for people. So I would really like to be able to sit across the table from those parents and say, your kid can do whatever they want to do in life. Here's how. Here are the resources. Here are the pathways. Here are some examples. that's not a conversation I can genuinely have right now. So really, I'm driven a lot by thinking of kids and hoping that their life path is smoother than mine was. And there's a little girl at the New York Institute for Special Education in the Bronx, and we were interviewing kids and asking them what they want to be when they grow up. And this little girl said, she said, I can be a helicopter pilot if I want to. And I want that optimism and that enthusiasm and that dream to live within her. But I know that she was 7 years old. I know that soon people are going to start telling her, no, you can't do that. No, that won't work. That's too dangerous because you're blind. And I don't want her to be hearing that. I want her to be hearing, yes, we're working on autonomous vehicles. There's technology coming. You can become an engineer and help design that stuff so that blind people can be helicopter pilots.
Yep. I love it. It's amazing how many people I talk to are driven by adversity. And I'm one of them. So literally, I have this show, I do the work I do in the employee loyalty and leadership space because of, how I was as a child, and I didn't feel like I was heard and I didn't feel like I was important. And so much of the work I do is around leadership and helping leaders know that they have the power to change their lives, particularly for their employees. So my focus is on employees as an employee advocate, and helping leaders understand the impact they have by the choices and the actions and the interactions they have with the people that they lead. And it's all stemmed from my why. So I find that in a great amount of people that I speak to on the show. So again, I'm sure that people are listening right now are being inspired again, especially during this really tumultuous time for all of us. It's just nuts. I have 4 kids and I'm at home with all of them and they're doing distance learning, quote unquote. Right. And so, that has been a challenge in itself. One kid who just, for 2 days in a row, just like in tears, like, I can't, like, this is just not, like, I need to just go to school, even if I get the virus, like, this is just too much, and so just that level of we're all being stretched so thin. And again, during these, people want to hear the positives. They want to hear that it's possible for us to get through all of this, and I feel like with a story like yours that was told with a bit of strength, but I do know there were quite a bit of tears behind it. I think that's just what people need to hear. They have to hear that we can have strength during these crazy times. So that's good. Thank you. I'm curious to know the folks that you lead in the organization. How would you think they describe your leadership style?
Well, I have done 360s in the past, and some comments that come out are that I maybe over include as far as building consensus and understanding and getting lots of input before I make decisions, and that I don't really believe that I have that many decisions to make. My senior leadership team, between all of them, they manage all parts of the organization, and I want to be clear on who has the decision-making authority, and it's mostly them. There are a couple things that I have the decision, the D. We said, who has the D? Who gets to make this decision? And then we talk about the C, consulting. Who do you need to consult with, internally or externally, so you have enough information to make a decision you're confident in? Information. Who do you need to get information from? Who do you need to get information? Who do you need to share information with? So we talk about goals, roles, and processes. And the roles, we talk a lot about the D, the C, and the I, the decision, the consulting, and the information. And I only one D, only one decision maker on each initiative or project. You can get as much support and help and input as you want. I'm really here to support everyone's success and make sure that people have the tools and the resources they need to accomplish our strategic objectives. My job, a lot of it's aligning, making sure that people are in active mutual support of one another, that each part of our organization is reinforcing the other, that we're learning. We went through a very nice employee-led values identification process last year, and we settled on 4. So learning, We want to learn all the time from everything we're doing. Collaboration. We want to be collaborating internally and externally. Innovation, because we need to do things differently in order to get different results. And excellence. So continuous quality improvement. Got a good grounding in that in the aerospace industry with ISO and AS9100. So I understand continuous quality improvement.
That's interesting. So like when you think about most CEOs, I got to tell you, from my perspective, if your biggest, constructive feedback is that you over collaborate or you over include, yay for you. Because
yeah, I mean, I've had people come to me and say, I want you to make this decision. You're the CEO. And often I push back and say, well, really, this is your decision to make, or this is your colleague's decision to make. Let's step back into the process and walk through the process so that the right person who has the authority to make the decision can make a good decision that they're confident in. And I also say, we don't want paralysis by analysis either. When we get to the point where we feel we've gotten enough input and gathered enough data that a decision can be made that we're comfortable with, that we're basing it on a good process. It might be a wrong decision. It might hindsight might prove that, but sometimes we take messy, inspired action.
Yeah, I love that. Again, thinking about how most leadership teams work in organizations, it usually is very siloized, even within that team, and there, fractures in communication and all kinds of things that are in there. But then they leave out so many people. They leave out the people who know the business. And so I appreciate that you do include those who you feel like are in a better position given their proximity to the source or to the issue to solve that issue.
I mean, leadership theory, servant leadership is probably in my this palette of my leadership, distributed leadership, authentic leadership. Far removed from command and control.
Interesting. Okay, I love that. Well, so I'm curious to know. I think by listening to your story and listening to how you lead and the thought process that you put into it and the inclusiveness that you have, I'm sure people are curious to know: is there ever a time when you were not the best version of yourself through all of these, peaks and valleys? Is there ever a specific time? So if you can recall, for those who are listening, a specific story when you were not the best version of you, and then what did you do to come out of it?
Yeah, and it goes back to the model and the goals, roles, and processes. When I was at the Lighthouse for the Blind in Seattle, there was an opportunity to do something really, really innovative and collaborative with 9 other nonprofit social enterprises in the community. And it was around our manufacturing capabilities and combining capabilities. These are all nonprofits who were in aerospace manufacturing, and employing people with a variety of barriers to employment. So we employed people who are blind. There was an organization that worked with people transitioning out of incarceration, organization that worked with people with developmental disabilities. And I got very excited about this because it would be a national replicable model. And I took ownership of it, and I drove it, and it wasn't really mine to do. We had a director, a VP of manufacturing, very capable, passionate person who loves creating jobs for people who are blind. And that should have been his initiative. I, again, got over enthused and started driving it. And, a couple months in, he and I kept having conflict because I would say, we need to do this, this, and this. That was coming from me. That really should have been coming from him. And so we walked it back. And I said, in all honesty, I should not have been driving this. This is really yours. I will step out. I'm here to support you. Let me know how I can be of assistance. And please accept my apology for stepping out of our goals, roles, and processes the way I did. And he accepted that and moved forward the initiative.
How did that feel? Because you having to do that because you were so excited, and how did it feel? So number one, having to step out, and number two, well, just having to be vulnerable enough to say oops and to realize it and to apologize for it. What was the whole series of what was going on in your head, mind, body when that took place?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First, I felt remiss in that I had created a situation where there was tension between myself and one of the leaders of the organization that didn't need to be there, that wouldn't have been there had I taken a breath and paused and thought it through rather than charging ahead. I felt good when I got clarity and realized why it wasn't working. Again, because I'd stepped out of our processes and our definitions of goals, roles, and processes. And I felt a certain amount of satisfaction when things were back on track and working well. That we had understood where the problems were and that we addressed them. So a little bit of chagrin, I guess, on taking that misstep, but ultimately feeling good that when we returned to our structures, our processes, our objectives, that things fell back into place the way they should.
It's interesting. So I am a DISC certified trainer. I don't know if you know what DISC is.
I sure do. Yeah.
And so as I hear some of your language related to goals, roles, processes, structure, things like that, I start to lean into those different behavioral styles. I start to think, like, is he an SC? I know you got quite a bit of an S. You have to with your methodical.
I'm a S and I.
Yeah. I hear so much because of the methodical, the idea of process makes me hear S right away. I don't hear the I as much because I think there's a little bit of, that's why I keep saying, I know even when you were telling your story, I said, I can see that you're saying it with such strength, but I know there was a lot of emotion. I'm trying to pull some of that emotion out of you.
Yes. I
want to hear it. I want everybody to hear it because I know it's there. It's behind all of these things. Now I'm curious to know the person who said, who you apologized to. Did you immediately see after you guys came to a head and then that you transitioned into yes, it's you? Did you see his whole demeanor and just everything change when that took place?
Yeah. I mean, yes. So fully embraced the initiative, the innovation of it, the opportunities that this collaboration offered, not just for us, but as models for others. So yeah, it was very, very noticeable.
That's awesome. And I think it's good. This is where all the growth comes from. That's why I love these stories, because the growth happens in the times when we weren't our best versions. And that's where the brilliance is at to me in leadership. I love to highlight these particular times because that's when you see that it's about an evolution. It's a journey. We're on a long path that really doesn't end until we're not here on this planet.
Yeah.
Leadership is an evolution, right? So that's why I like to take people through that. So for those who might be listening and either could be struggling in their leadership, might need a little extra motivation down the path that we're walking, what might be some pearls of wisdom you might leave them with?
Just learn from others. I mean, there are people who've gone through so many situations and dealt with so much, and podcasts, books, biographies. Think of people you admire. Talk to them. It doesn't need to be a formal mentor-mentee relationship. When I decided to enter the nonprofit sector, I actually went and met with CEOs of some organizations I admired in Seattle, and I was talking to the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Western Washington, and I was a securities broker at the time. She had been a securities broker, and she transitioned into the nonprofit sector, and she said, there's a huge need for professional fundraisers, and you have a finance background, and that'd be a great fit for you. So that's what I did. I became, like I said, a development officer for the Seattle Public Library Foundation, raising money for the statewide Talking Book and Braille Library. So there are people out there who have gone through, there's very little new under the sun as far as challenges and opportunities in leadership. So, pick your favorite influencer, pick your favorite game changer, and read about them, listen to them, reach out to them, talk to them. That's what I would say.
Oh, I love that, because a lot of times we think that the people that you just described are untouchable or unaccessible, or those types of things. And sometimes,
right.
Sometimes that's true, because because they have to sometimes protect themselves from people that have agendas and things. But then also there are lots of other times where that's not true, and people are open, and especially right now where we're all just feeling a level of isolation, and it'd be nice to connect. So I love that. Thank you for that piece of advice.
You pick an inaccessible person, you Google them, and there'll be a TED Talk, there'll be a podcast, they will have written a blog, they will have written a book. You might not get direct access, but you can certainly have access to their thinking and their experience in other ways.
Love that. Yes, that's a great reminder. There's so much out there, and taking that time to fill ourselves up during this time is really critical. Well, I appreciate you being on, Kirk. And for those listening, if you have found great value in listening to our conversation, please do share this. That's how it gets out. That's how people learn about leaders like Kirk. And it's not that any of them or us are perfect, right? The idea is that we can learn from one another. And if we are in these similar situations, we can get ourselves out by, like he was just saying, learning from those who have been in those shoes. So do that. Also, don't forget to write a review on either Apple Podcast or wherever you listen, on Spotify or wherever. And that's how everybody else gets access to this. There's a lot of leadership podcasts. I think there's something different and unique here. And that is because I'm not highlighting perfection. I'm highlighting imperfection. And that's where the brilliance is at. So thanks again, Kirk. This has been amazing.
Oh, the time flew by. I'll tell you that. So
it really did.
I appreciate an opportunity to talk to you on this day when the country is in such disruption and uncertainty. And this has been a nice oasis in the day.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening and for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.